Two people live in the same neighborhood. One makes $95,000 a year, the other makes $52,000. You'd expect the first person to feel safer, but they don't. They're stressed, behind, always one surprise expense away from panic. The second person? Less income, more peace, more savings, and way more control. So what happened? It wasn't income, it was stuff. One home feels like a calm place to live, the other feels like a paid storage unit for purchases from three different versions of the same person. Old hobbies, impulse buys, upgrade mistakes, someday items. And all of it costs money. Not once, twice. Most people think buying something is a one-time event. You pay, you own it, done. But that's not how ownership works. Everything you buy has a first cost, that's the price tag. Then it has a second cost, the space it takes, the upkeep, the cleaning, the guilt, the attention, the money it could have become if you had invested it instead. That's the hidden relationship between stuff and money. And once you see it, your entire financial life starts to look different. This is not a video telling you to own 3 shirts and a spoon. This is not anti-enjoyment. This is about something much more practical. Why some people earn good money and still feel trapped, while other people earn less and quietly build freedom. And today, I'm going to show you the math behind that. Then I'll give you 10 rules that make this easy to apply without turning your life into a punishment. Let's start with one example. A treadmill. You bought it with good intentions. You pictured morning runs, discipline, transformation, a whole new phase of life. Now it mostly holds laundry. And here's the part most people miss. That treadmill is still charging you, not through a bill, through space. If it takes up about 20 square feet, that space has value. You are already paying for that space through rent or mortgage. So the treadmill is not just exercise equipment, it's now rented storage. And once you notice that, you start seeing it everywhere. The unused keyboard, the spare room full of boxes, the giant juicer from your health phase, the folding desk bike, the shelf of untouched books bought for your fantasy self. That's not harmless clutter. That's money with furniture wrapped around it. Quick question. If your home suddenly charged each object rent, what would you evict first? Probably more than you expected. And that's just the physical cost. Now let's talk about the mental one. Clutter is expensive in a way that doesn't show up on a bank statement. It drains attention. It creates visual noise. It keeps your brain slightly busy even when you're trying to rest. A pile on the chair is not just a pile. It's an unfinished decision. A crowded counter is not just a counter. It's friction. Visual clutter can increase stress and make it harder to focus. So some of the stuff in your home is not only costing you money, it is actively making your life feel heavier. That matters, because people don't make their best financial decisions when they already feel overwhelmed. Then there's the biggest cost of all, the invisible one, opportunity cost. Let's say someone spends $15,000 building a home gym. Not impossible. A rack, weights, cardio machine, flooring, mirror, bench, and accessories. Looks reasonable. But if that same $15,000 had been invested and left alone for 15 years, it could have turned into something far bigger. So the home gym isn't just a home gym. It might also be part of a future emergency fund, a future down payment, a future year off, a future layer of freedom. That is what ownership hides from people. Not just what something costs now, what it prevents later. So how do you stop this without becoming extreme? You use better rules, simple ones, fast ones, rules that make bad purchases feel obvious. Let's go through them. Rule 1. Think in cost per use. A $400 jacket worn 200 times is cheap. A $200 jacket worn twice is expensive. That's the game. Stop looking only at the price. Start looking at usage. This instantly changes how you think about clothes, kitchen gadgets, subscriptions, electronics, and even cars. The question is not, is this expensive? The question is, will I use this enough to make it worth it? If the answer is no, the price doesn't matter. It's still waste. A bargain is not a bargain if it becomes a permanent resident in your closet. That's not saving. That's adopting clutter. Rule 2. Use the replacement test. Ask yourself, if this item disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? That question is brutal and useful because it cuts through all the nonsense. Not, but I paid a lot for it. Not, but maybe someday. Not, but it still works. Just, would I buy it again? If the answer is no, then you are not keeping that item because it adds value. You are keeping it because of inertia, and inertia is one of the most expensive habits people have. Rule 3. Fight the boredom upgrade. A shocking amount of wealth gets destroyed by replacing things that still work, not because they failed, because they stopped feeling exciting. Your phone is fine, but there's a new one. Your car is reliable, but now it feels boring. Your headphones work, but now they don't feel premium enough. That habit looks small in real time, but over 10, 20, 30 years, it can burn through an absurd amount of money because you are not upgrading out of need, you are upgrading to feel something. And that is one of the most expensive emotional patterns in personal finance. If an item still works, but you suddenly want a new one, pause. You may not need an upgrade. You may need novelty. Those are not the same thing. Rule 4. Make spending harder. Impulse buying loves speed, so slow it down. Delete shopping apps, remove saved payment details, unsubscribe from store emails, and use one simple rule. Wait 24 hours before buying any non-essential item. That pause is powerful because a lot of spending is emotional momentum. You're stressed, bored, restless, annoyed, reward-seeking, and in that state, convenience is dangerous. But when you wait, the emotional charge fades, and suddenly the thing that felt urgent starts to look random. Rule 5. Count what you own. Pick one category: shirts, shoes, mugs, cables, water bottles, skincare products. Honestly, because most people have no idea how much they own. They guess 12, the real number is 34. They guess 8, the real number is 19. And that moment matters because vagueness protects excess, and counting destroys the illusion. And once the illusion is gone, accumulation starts to feel ridiculous in a helpful way. You don't need a documentary crew to expose overconsumption. You just need to count your black t-shirts. That's usually enough. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. A lot of people buy equipment for a life they haven't actually started living. That's how homes become graveyards of temporary enthusiasm. The camping phase, the smoothie phase, the DJ phase, the I'm definitely getting into hiking now phase. Instead, test the interest first. Borrow the gear, rent the equipment, try the cheaper version. Take the class before buying the setup, because curiosity is cheap, ownership is not. Rule 7. Watch the lifestyle multiplier. Some purchases don't come alone. They bring a whole ecosystem with them. Let's say you buy a high-end camera. Now you want a better lens, a bag, a tripod, editing software, extra batteries, memory cards, cloud storage, an external hard drive, maybe a course, maybe travel to justify the gear. And now a single purchase has quietly become a full financial branch of your personality. Same thing with a luxury backyard grill. The grill becomes tools, then furniture, then patio upgrades, then hosting supplies, then fuel refills, then covers, lights, decor, and accessories. One item becomes 10. That's the lifestyle multiplier. So before buying the headline item, ask, what else will this purchase recruit into my life? That's the real cost. A lot of expensive things are not expensive because of the first receipt. They're expensive because they never arrive alone. Rule 8. Define enough before lifestyle inflation defines it for you. This is where high earners get trapped. Income rises, then spending rises to match it. Nicer apartment, nicer car, nicer vacations, more delivery, more convenience, more paid shortcuts. And after a while, luxuries stop feeling luxurious, they start feeling basic. Now you're earning more, but you still feel pressure. Why? Because enough keeps moving. And if you never define it, the world will define it for you. And the world always wants more from you. So decide early. What is enough?
enough space, enough comfort.
Without that line, there is no finish line. Rule 9. Redefine wealth. Wealth is not how impressive your life looks from the outside. Wealth is optionality. It's the ability to say, I can leave this job. I can survive a rough patch. I can take time off. I can help someone I love. I can breathe. That is wealth. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A house full of expensive stuff can make you look successful while quietly making you less free. Because the more of your money that gets trapped in possessions, the less room you have to make powerful choices. So don't ask, what do I own? Ask, what choices has my money bought me? That question changes everything. A person with fewer things and 6 months of expenses saved is often richer than a person with designer furniture and no margin. It just doesn't photograph as well. Rule 10. Declutter in cycles, not in crises. Most people wait too long. Then they do one giant purge. That feels productive for a weekend. But clutter doesn't appear all at once. It sneaks in. One package, one drawer, one duplicate, one I'll deal with it later pile. So the answer is not one heroic cleanout. It's regular review, small resets, one shelf, one category, one closet section, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. The goal is not perfection. The goal is interception. Catch it early, before your home starts charging interest. Here's the surprising part. The less financially secure people feel, the more tempting emotional spending becomes. Because buying things can create a quick feeling of progress, or relief, or identity, or reward. But when your savings grow, when your space feels calmer, when your bills feel lighter, that compulsion often weakens. You stop needing every purchase to rescue your mood. That creates a powerful loop. Less clutter, less stress, better decisions, more savings, more security, less urge to spend emotionally. That's the virtuous cycle. And you do not need to do all of it at once. You just need a plan. This week, do the 10-item replacement test. Pick 10 random items in your home. Ask the same question every time. If this disappeared today, would I buy it again? That's it. You are not trying to become a minimalist in one afternoon. You are trying to tell the truth about what is still useful in your life. That's the first step. This month, start the 24-hour rule. No non-essential purchase gets bought immediately. Not clothes, not gadgets, not decor, not life upgrade products. Wait a day. For larger purchases, wait longer. You will be shocked how many things only felt necessary for about 11 minutes. This quarter, count 3 categories. That's it. 3. Clothes, kitchen tools, old electronics, beauty products, fitness gear. Whatever tends to multiply in your home. Count them. Because when you count something, you stop being vague, and vague is where clutter likes to hide. This year, define what enough means for you. Enough spending, enough comfort, enough savings, enough lifestyle, enough convenience. Write it down, because if you don't define enough, you can spend your whole life chasing the next version of normal and still feel behind. So let's go back to those 2 people. Same neighborhood, same economy, same world. One earns more but feels trapped by a life full of purchases that kept multiplying. The other earns less but built space. Space in the home, space in the budget, space in the mind. And that space became confidence. That option is more available than most people think. Not because income doesn't matter, it does, but because spending has a hidden weight that most people never calculate. At some point, personal finance stops being about numbers on a spreadsheet. It becomes a question of control. Who's in charge here? You
or everything you bought trying to improve your life. Because the choice is not really between owning more and owning less. The choice is whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're okay with your possessions owning you. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more psychology-backed personal finance and practical money habits that actually make life feel lighter.